Oh, I have a feeling people are gonna dislike this one more than the Alaska one, but things need to be said, discussed, and brought to people's attention. BenDeLaCreme is an interesting case when it comes to Drag Race. She was the strongest competitor on All Stars 3, the second strongest on Season 6, and based on how you look at it, the strongest competitor on the entire show, or second strongest, right after Bianca. However, and with the point of this video, her high scores were not the most fairly earned. The favoritism of DeLa was not because of something she did. You'll see that, unlike Alaska, she never broke the rules or didn't answer what was asked of her and yet still won. She was just saved a lot. Or when it comes to All Stars 3, she was just dealt a great hand. Even though this is a given, I still feel need to say it, just because I know how people are. I do not hate DeLa. This video is not critiquing DeLa's drag or her as a person, but rather, and as the title suggests, the favoritism of her from and on the show. As I've said previously, DeLa's case is very interesting, because the favoritism of her happened on both seasons she was on, Season 6 and All Stars 3, but the said favoritism was different, or rather, was shown differently. For Season 6, the favoritism starts in Episode 6, well, the 6th competitive episode, which is actually the 7th episode of the season, where DeLa ends up in the bottom 2 alongside Darian Lake. She clearly loses the lip sync. The judges respond better to Darian. Darian is told Shantae you stay first. BenDeLaCreme actually isn't even told Shantae you stay at first. Rue just tells her that she wants to see more from her and I quote, "By the power invested in me, by me," and only then does he say Shantae you stay. There was never a reason given for DeLa being saved that I'm aware of. We cannot even say that she was doing so well that they didn't want a strong competitor like her out of the race, because Ongina on Season 1 and Jessica Wilde on Season 2 weren't saved, and they too never landed below save prior to their bottom 2 placement. Furthermore, the only other time prior to this that a double save happened was in Season 3 with Yara Sofia, where we had a similar scenario of a queen that was doing well, losing to a queen that was okay or bombed most challenges. I do have to mention that in Season 3's case, Yara was not doing as well as DeLa did on Season 6, and also there is a possible legitimate reason behind that double Shantae, which is Carmen leaving the stage and playing a little dirty, after which they told the queens that they couldn't leave the stage during a lip sync. But why was DeLa saved? There's really no logic, rhyme, or reason behind her staying in the competition, but Rue gave her a second chance regardless. Her time on Season 6 after this wasn't the most stellar, because the episode right after this one, she ends up being in the low 3 spots with Jocelyn and Laganja. Usually, whenever a queen returned to the competition or was allowed to stay, there was extra pressure put on her to be better, to do better, so that their inclusion or re-inclusion into the competition is justified. Well, I guess that went out of the window in this episode for DeLa. She completely bombed her stand-up routine. Oh yeah, I forgot to say, the queens had to write stand-up routines and perform them for the elderly in the Maxi Challenge. DeLa did so poorly that she actually never even remotely got a laugh from the audience, told all of her jokes too quickly, and even got the infamous "so tell us a joke" from an audience member, who was actually the old man that Jinx Monsoon made over in Season 5, a fact which I know someone would have gone all, you forgot, if I hadn't mentioned it. The only other queen that never got a laugh was Laganja. Keep that in mind. I went back and rewatched the judges' critiques for the challenge. DeLa was not just negatively critiqued for her performance in the challenge, but also for the look that she gave. Santino told her that he was getting bored of seeing her quote-unquote old showgirl looks, to which DeLa responded with saying that she wore that look because Michelle wanted to see more of her, and not a character, and Michelle in turn responded with, "It has nothing to do with clothes." This little tidbit about DeLa's personality is not the most important part of this section of the video, or rather for it. We'll get back to it later on, but for now it just shows you that, even after getting a second chance, DeLa took it for granted for the most part, and did not apply what the judges had more or less already critiqued her on. The only positive critique that DeLa got, or rather the only one that we were shown, was that her jokes were intelligent, and that wasn't even from one of the main judges, but that everything else sucked. Laganja got the same critique about her personality being fake, and Rue herself pointed this out. She literally says, and I quote, It's the same critique we had for BenDeLaCreme. The voice and the personality is what separates them from being human, meaning that it didn't allow them to come off as genuine people. Though Rue also says,
"And I'm not gonna fucking steer you wrong, not for no goddamn TV show."
Okay. Jocelyn got more good critiques than the other two. She was told that she had a great joke. Her having ADD and talking about how hard it is for her, and then mid-sentence seeing something on the ground and getting distracted. And that she had a great start, but then that afterwards she kind of flatlined. She was also critiqued because Bianca did better than her. It makes sense to critique her on this because she was the one that made up the order of the queens would perform in. However, that's not a critique on her performance. So Jocelyn got the best response out of these three, both from the judges and the audience. Laganja was just iconically bad, and DeLa rambled on for a minute until she was told to actually tell a joke. So riddle me this. Why the genuine fuck was DeLa not in the bottom two here? Oh, I'll tell you why. Because no matter her opponent, she would have been eliminated. The lip sync between Jocelyn and Laganja that we got is regarded as the best lip sync of the season, or at least in the top 3, alongside the Vibology lip sync and the Think lip sync. The show clearly was pushing DeLa forward, and had her saved here for no other reason than wanting her to win, or do well, and this is not on DeLa, it's the show's fault. So essentially, in this episode, DeLa got a third chance. That's all I can say about the favoritism in season 6. But there is another thing to mention when it ultimately comes to DeLa's elimination. In her mirror message, which read in its entirety, "Dear Top 4, how's it going? I'm doing pretty good. Sometimes you have to have Mama Rue yell at ya a bunch of times before it sinks in. I guess I never reached that number of times, Darian. I knew the second I was up against you, I was out the door. You get it, lady. I wish you all the luck in the world and only harbor enough resentment to write a long, pointless message that you will have to clean and clean and clean and clean. But for real though, you girls are my heroes." So essentially, DeLa knew that she was going home the second time, and possibly the first time too when she was up against Darian. Before we transition into All Stars 3, we have to go back to the critique that DeLa got about her personality on season 6. She was constantly told that the judges could never see her, like the real her, that they only saw the character, with the excuse that they don't get to see them in the workroom or out of drag. Well, tell me this, isn't RuPaul the first person to say that when he's in drag, he basically changes personalities? He becomes less serious, more fun, more outgoing, extroverted, whereas when he's out of drag, he's more calm and collected and introverted. So then, when DeLa puts on a character when she's in drag, why is she critiqued for it? We learned that DeLa's delightfulness and high energy come from the fact that Ben, the person behind the character, didn't have the easiest life. So DeLa is kind of the polar opposite of that keeps on reminding him to be more positive and fun and open, and also through the character of her, and in general through creating characters, Ben stays in a good place. Let's not pretend that the judges that are always there don't know the tea from the workroom or behind the scenes, even though they deny it all the time. To quote the Spice Girls, "Everything you say is denying, you ain't fooling nobody but yourself." I get this critique from the standpoint of previous winners being the same in and out of drag, but Jinx Monsoon, the most recent winner at the time, is not. Even she, much like DeLa, is more high energy and fun when in drag, which, again, and I have to repeat myself, is the case with RuPaul too, you know, the host of the show. The character thing seeps into the All Stars 3 favoritism, but unlike Alaska's, this favoritism started even before the actual season started. I believe many of you know what I'm talking about. I've seen people talk about this, and it's the fact that pretty much every challenge on All Stars 3 had something to do with portraying and creating a character. Episode 2 had the queens portray celebrities. Episode 3 had them portray certain dating shows, or rather bachelors, stereotypical characters. Episode 4 was Snatch Games, so again, impersonating a celebrity. Episode 6 was the Kitty Girls main challenge, where the queens had to, again, create a character, and then episode 7 was an acting challenge, where the queens portrayed parodies of famous movie characters. I don't think that I have to remind you that in the 6 episodes that DeLa was in, she was in the top 2 5 times. The only time that she wasn't in the top 2 was in episode 5, when there was no character to be created, but rather the queens had to present themselves through those weird-ass soup cans. I mean, okay, yeah, episode 5 was probably the worst judged episode of All Stars 3, the second worst being episode 2, of course. I talked about both in the mistreatment of Aja and Torji video, so check that out if you want. But basically, what I'm trying to say is that the season, whether it was done on purpose or not, was set up for DeLa to win, or a DeLa-esque queen to win challenge-wise. The final jury voting the queens was a really dumb twist, because it ensured that out of the top 4, the worst 2 would be the top 2 by design. I would also like to mention that the change of a talent show to a variety show in episode 1 gave certain queens, DeLa included, an advantage. Had it stayed a talent show and DeLa had the same performance, she would have been safe or high at best, because what she did literally anybody else could do. But what Kennedy, Aja, Trixie and Torji did takes time and work to perfect. Honestly, I would put Chi-Chi into that mix too, but taunt whirling is hard as fuck. Before we end the video, I just want to mention that with DeLa being cast in All Stars 3, she technically got a 4th chance at winning a Drag Race season, which is why in my Why All Stars 3 Didn't Work video, I said that she shouldn't have ever been cast, which people took as me hating DeLa and such. Which, like, why are you booing me? I'm right. In conclusion, all hail BenDeLaCreme.